We speak then to Professor Bheki Mngomezulu, who also joins us as we still stay on these live visuals. Now, Prof, one of the things that Vuyo talks about is her standing her ground. She was feisty, and some have described her as the engine of the ANC. At the same time, she did come under fire. We remember when, she had to be the one that suspends the now, suspended Secretary General Ace Magashule. Some said her taking this decision was a betrayal, while others had said that she was in fact showing that it didn't matter who you were, the ANC needed to do what it needed to do according to the rules. And I remember at some point her saying that I'm not confused, I'm doing exactly what needs to take place. Let's talk about that part of her legacy, because a lot of people continue to talk about, how she continued, regardless of who you were, she stood her ground.
No, thank you very much for that question. And in fact, it's one of the most important questions. And it comes at a time when we are celebrating the late President Nelson Mandela, who in fact assisted not just the organization, the ANC, but also assisted the country in many respects. And now we're talking about Jessie Duarte, and there are very few people like her, to be honest. And I regret the fact that she had to pass on just before the ANC's elective conference, where you need people with a backbone. And Jessie Duarte was one of those people. One, she loved the ANC passionately, but then secondly, she was disciplined. And then thirdly, she had a backbone. And we don't have too many leaders with those kind of qualities. We have leaders who move with the flow, as it were. You'll find them singing this tune today, and then they sing the other tune tomorrow. Coming to the issue that you are mentioning, or the instance that you are mentioning, she had her own views as to how the issue of Ace Magashule was supposed to have been handled. But then, of course, in a democratic order, simple majority means that even if you hold a different opinion, once there's been a deliberation and the opinion was defeated, you then have to abide by what everybody else has agreed to. And then if you are called upon to make the announcement, don't second guess what others have said. You just go there and deliver the message, because that is a collective responsibility, which then speaks to the point I've been mentioning in a couple of weeks, including a piece that I penned today, which will come in a few weeks' time, and a few days' time, in fact, saying that in situations like this, when you have trying times, that is when real leaders emerge. If you are not a real leader and you become a leader by default, it shows in times like this when you are supposed to toe the line and say, am I going to represent my own interest, or am I going to represent the interests of the organization that I'm a party of? So in this case, Jessie Duarte then did exactly that, because she knew what needed to be done, but then the majority of the people in the NEC, as we were saying, had a different opinion. Then she had to take a stance. With Ace Magashule having been suspended, then she basically held the reins as the doing the work of the SG, so to speak. And then she had to take a firm position. In that position, whether she was acting or she was on a full-time basis, she knew what the rules were, and she had to abide by those rules. And we need such people.
And Prof, when one thinks about the conference and listening to what you're saying, it's likely to be a difficult road ahead, is it not? Especially when we look at what has been at play. You look at some of the conferences that we've seen, the regional ones, they've been battling to even adopt credentials, an issue that some say that, the SGO's office would have been so critical when it comes to really putting to bed. And now you're inching closer towards the conference in December. Some say that she would have been needed a great deal here as well.
No, I agree entirely. For the points that I've just mentioned, that she was a shrewd leader, but then she knew what the policies of the ANC are, and she also knew what the constitution of the ANC says. And then she would make sure that she articulates that constitution or the party position the best way she could. Right now, we are going to the elective conference, as we have said, but we are starting off with the policy conference this month. And we are going to miss her as a country watching the policy conference, because some of the leaders are not as strong as she was, are not as firm as she was, are not also as reliable as she was. Because truth be told, we have very few leaders we can count on. In her, we would find a leader who understood what needed to be done. And then once she had taken a position, she would try by all means to defend that position and convince as many people as possible. But in the event that she emerged, in fact, the loser, she would accept whatever the decision was that had been taken. Now, before we go to the December elective conference, we are going to miss her in the policy conference, because then you will find the people agreeing on a policy position when in fact it's clear that policy position doesn't make sense. And there will be people who will be reluctant to raise their voice because they are worried about the elective conference, that maybe if I disagree with so and so, then I don't stand a chance in December, because it's more about positions than about the party and about the country. And that is why I'm saying that her disappearance at this stage is in fact a great loss, not just to the ANC, but to the country as a whole.
And Prof, just a short while ago, as we were in conversation, we saw various leaders of the ANC as, they were, paying their respects and throwing in this, the scent there as they were, walking past her grave. What reflections are they supposed to be making right now as various leaders of the ANC at this particular moment?
In fact, coincidentally, the piece that I just referred to, that I finished about an hour ago, I was saying that if ANC delegates go to the ANC conference and then eventually they go to the elective conference, they must do what they are supposed to be doing right now when they walk past her coffin. That is to say, here is a leader who has passed on, and she's revered by a number of us for the work that she has done for the country and for the ANC as an organization. If I were to die today, how will I be remembered? I think that is the critical question that all the ANC leaders should be asking themselves at the moment. That if I were to be the one in that coffin, what were people going to say about me? And if they were going to say right things about me, will they be telling the truth? Or would they just be convincing others that here is a comrade who has passed on, and to avoid maybe giving a bad name, let us try to cover whatever wrong the person had done? Because you are as good as what you did while you were alive. So whatever we do right now is going to be our witness once we are gone. In this case, Jessie Duarte did all she could while she was alive, and we have heard Vuyo Mngomezulu, for example, identifying some issues or some instances where things did not go well. But then, because she was a leader that she didn't hold any grudge against anyone, because she held a view and she articulated a view, and then she stood by it. And then she would be ready to explain to you why she took a particular position. The same cannot be said about a number of our leaders who, when cornered, they will in fact get angry, and then some will start colluding against you, and then before you know it, some of them will be eliminated. And that is not the kind of leaders that we want. So in this case, to answer your question, I think and I hope that all the leaders that walked past that grave were in fact not just looking at Jessie Duarte who has passed on, but they were doing a reflection on themselves as to how they would be remembered if they were to disappear any time from now. Will the same thing happen, or would something different totally happen?
And some, of course, even taking back, as you take us back to moments, as Vuyo says, during her run-ins with the media, some even saying that she was, describing her as a bully. And as you say that, even in those moments when Vuyo says you may have difficulties with her, but she never stood angry at you forever. There were also other, moments where things were not so favorable. I mean, you think about her time as the MEC of Safety and Security, and, there were also allegations there when it comes to the misuse of public funds. There was also that accident as well. That also then became another big issue. And then you look at fast forward state capture, you're seeing that even at some point where she took, also speaking openly to say that, her son-in-law, in fact, should have never taken, a job in the then, Minister of Finance, Des Van Rooyen's office. So those were things others are saying as we reflect, Prof, that this is what makes up her legacy, whether it was, one to be frowned upon at a time or one to be celebrated.
Indeed, my sister, indeed, because if you are a leader, first of all, you must have a thick skin. I remember during the 2021 local government election, one of the aspiring leaders, in fact, had an issue with me when I said to him, if you don't have a thick skin, forget about politics. I even cited the former President Zuma. I said, if you saw what was happening to the former president in parliament and in other forums, she would in fact stand his ground and then laugh it off instead of fighting back. Once then he had thought about the response, he would then give a response. So Jessie Duarte then is the kind of a person who would not look at you, but to look at what you had done. Like the example we are citing, we're talking about a blood relative who has done something that she disapproved of. And in this case, she didn't say, because this one is my blood relative, I must then support him no matter what, because that would have been uncharacteristic of her. With other leaders, something different would have happened, because they would say, because this one is my son, this one is my nephew, then I'm going to defend him with all I have, which is then not the kind of a leader that you would want to lead an organization or to lead a country. So in this case, I think that there are many lessons to be drawn, and I'm glad that almost all the politicians who were afforded an opportunity to talk at this funeral, they cited a number of instances where Jessie Duarte demonstrated her leadership skills. And then I'm thinking and hoping that while they were saying that about her, they were also thinking about themselves if the same would also apply. Because if you have a blood relative, I can cite some examples, but I will not do it now. I could cite some examples where some leaders had their relatives doing things that were not right, and instead of reprimanding them, they would in fact defend them, hire lawyers, do all sorts of things, and then still want to be our leaders. And then we ask ourselves the question, did they think about us when they were doing that, or did they only think about themselves? So those are the kinds of questions that arise when we reflect on Jessie Duarte.
All right, Prof, let's leave it there with you for now. Thank you so much for those reflections, and I'm certain these are reflections that will continue throughout the course of the week.